Welcome to the Airplane Spoon podcast. Real stories and real questions about feeding children. I'm Serena Merle, feeding therapist and director of the Airplane Spoon. And I'm here for you every week to talk about different strategies and different facts and brain science and developmental research around feeding as it relates to your baby or your toddler, preschooler, or school age child. Feeding is challenging. It's so complex. There are so many elements that go into it. It could be sensory or taste or the chewing, the oral motor side, the swallowing, and all of the social, emotional, and relational aspect that has to do with mealtime and eating with others. So, today I want to talk to you about a topic that is very common, and I want to give you a couple of tips around this so that you feel more equipped to support your child. Today's question is, if my child refuses to eat raw apples, how can I get apples inside my child? Okay, it's kind of a weird question, but really what I'm trying to highlight here is that food comes in many, many different forms. And all of these forms can be considered valid in different ways. So, what I mean by this is that if you want your child to eat apples, and if your child doesn't know how or refuses to eat a fresh, raw apple, that there are so many other ways that your child could consume apples without just having to bite into a fresh, raw apple. So that's what I want to talk to you about today as we think about food forms and how we can validate that as part of the learning process for your child and understanding some of the sensory components to help build bridges to help your child to eat and accept more types of food. Okay, so going alongside of this apple example, and I'm not just talking about apples or fruits, this could work for many different types of food. But thinking about apples, apples in their raw, fresh food form is the main presentation. But apples can be changed and modified in many different ways. You could have applesauce. Applesauce is very, very popular. It's one of the main ingredients in most of the pouches and the purees. It could be a cup of applesauce with a spoon, homemade applesauce, or a packaged applesauce. You could have apple juice, also a very common juice that's available. Um, you could have apple cider, which is kind of like apple juice, but it's a little bit different. You could have apple pie, cooked apples in a pie form. You could have apple chips, whether those are the really crunchy, almost kind of like a potato chip, apple chips, or freeze dried apples, which are a little bit more like soft or foamy in their apple form. So, no matter the form of the apple, we can still consider that your child is consuming apple. Now, if you're saying, oh, it's just apple juice, that doesn't count, there's a lot of learning that can go in that, especially around flavor. Juices are a great way to expose child to different flavors of food so that they can build up that pleasure response, that they enjoy the taste of that food while they're still learning about the sensory response of not having to process whatever that feels like in the mouth. It's just liquid. And so having food in their juice form, whether that's orange juice, apple juice, you could do mango juice, pear juice, watermelon juice. You could even do like cucumber water or lemon water to learn about the different flavors of food is a great bridge of a form to start and take those steps to getting to eat that. Another step that's related is smoothies. By putting a certain type of food in a smoothie, it becomes essentially a puree or a very, very, nectar or thicker liquid Um, and that could be a great form to introduce that to the child, that it might be mixed in with other types of foods or fruits, and that's going to help with the flavor, but they're still getting it. Now, I want to say this about different food forms. If you're trying out some of these strategies, this isn't trickery. This isn't hiding. We're not sneaking putting apple in the smoothie so that our child does not see that we're putting apple in the smoothie. We want them to be aware and part of this. And especially if they could help cut up the apple or decide to put how many pieces they want in there. And that could be for anything. That could be for spinach. That could be for cucumber. That could be for banana. If you're adding it to a smoothie, for your child to know what's in that. If I said, here's your smoothie, but every single time it's different, that doesn't help your child to understand. But if I said, here's your apple, banana, orange smoothie, or this smoothie has spinach and pineapple and mango. So then they know what's inside of it. We don't want to trick, especially if you're going to be using different types of forms like powders. Powders is another form of food variation that can be added. There are different types of powders out there. You can get like a beet powder or maybe a greens powder that has a bunch of different spinach or kale or broccoli, super greens powder. There's mushroom powders. There's different protein powders out there. And the idea is that we're adding it for the nutritional factor, but that doesn't mean it has to be hidden from your child. Having your child help, let's put our mushroom powder in. They're going to be okay with it, knowing that I eat this and I can eat it in this form. And sometimes I like to use powders as a bridge, even if we're thinking about like a freeze dried fruit, or a dried vegetable, like freeze-dried strawberries. You could mash them up with a cup or a little hammer thing and make it a powder. And then you could eat the powder with your finger, or you could add some of the powder in your smoothie, or you can add some of the powder in your yogurt. And now I'm eating that food, strawberry, or maybe it's mashing up dried green beans and making them kind of like a powder. And that's bridging the gap of I can't eat that in this form. Maybe in its raw or its cooked form, I'm not comfortable with that because of the sensory experience. Maybe it's too wet. Maybe it's too slimy. Maybe it's just too hard to chew if your child does not have enough chewing skills to break down that food at this time. So we can think about forms of food and switching it up to have your child to be able to consume different foods, not just for the nutritional value. There's a peace of mind for parents thinking I can add mushroom powder and then they get the nutrition value of mushrooms. Um, but it can also be for a learning step for that child. If they're of you know, understanding and language and processing level, that you can talk to them about this and they can understand that, we're going to put one spinach leaf in our smoothie, or we're going to add some spinach powder or something like that. That helps them to learn, oh yeah, you eat spinach powder. You're still learning how to eat fresh spinach or cooked spinach. But that helps them to understand that food comes in a variety of ways. And if I don't like it in this way, I can self advocate and request for it to be in a different way, like bananas. You can have fresh bananas. Okay. Some children can't handle the kind of gooey stickiness and it makes them gag. So, what about banana chips? Banana chips are crunchy. A lot of children like crunchy. It feels good, like chips or crackers. You could also do frozen banana. And frozen banana in its form is it's kind of like it's almost like ice cream. It's very like soft and still creamy, but it's cold and it can be a little bit hard if it's frozen. And that can help be a bridge. So there's different methods, but there's different forms. And so all of this is valid to say, like, oh, my child doesn't eat any nuts. And then I'll ask families a lot of times when I'm starting off with a new family, I get a whole nutritional profile of what kind of foods does your child eat. And I'll ask, do they eat any seeds or nuts? And they say no. And I say, what about like peanut butter? They're like, oh yeah, they love peanut butter. I'm like, well, that counts. That's peanuts. It's just grounded peanuts into a paste form. And so it still counts. And sometimes families kind of discredit that, or they don't even realize that, oh, yeah, my child does eat peanuts. Maybe they don't want to eat just the plain peanuts themselves yet. Maybe they can't because they haven't figured out how to chew that, but they can still get that in different forms. And so for today, this is what I wanted to talk to you about, that there could be many different reasons why your child might be refusing certain types of food. That it could be the sensory experience. Too mushy, too wet, too crunchy, too soft. It could be the flavor at that time. Even just thinking about, you know, cooked corn and raw corn are different. Most vegetables, when they're cooked, they change their flavor a little bit. Fresh raw broccoli, cooked broccoli, or peas, raw peas and cooked peas, they're all going to change a little bit. And so we can be creative with that and trying to build a bridge. But children are not quite sure if a parent wants their child to eat peas. And then if I have them starting to eat raw, fresh peas, and then might peel them out of the little pod if they're eating like little snap pea snacks, and they might eat the peas that way. It's not cooked peas yet, but it's still peas. And so we want to credit that as a win and as a step that they're building that to be able to be more and more comfortable. Maybe they don't like the taste of the cooked peas right now. That's okay. We can build those bridges to get there. It's not just an all or nothing or the only one way that they have to eat this is in this one presentation. Foods have a lot of variety. This is why there's millions of recipe books and so many different types of preparation of food because we can have different forms. Think about potatoes. Potatoes is a great food that has so many different forms, whether it's boiled potatoes or mashed potatoes or French fries or chips or baked potatoes or potato soup. There's so many different ways you can eat potato. And all of those taste a little different. And some people like potatoes a certain way, and some people like potatoes always, and that's okay. So think about food forms. Think about being creative with how to expose your child to different variations of the foods that you want your child to eat. It could be a powder. It could be in a juice. It could be in a smoothie. It could be a dried, crunchy version of that versus the fresh version. All of those are great. They're great steps to build up your child's confidence and ability and understanding that, yes, I do eat that food and I can be learning how to eat that in different forms. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this gives you something to think about in terms of how to expose your child to different foods. It doesn't always have to be in just one form. And remember, you are doing an amazing job supporting your child on their feeding journey. You've got this. Love, enjoy, and eat.